Okay, guys, welcome to another OpsCast. We've got a very, very special episode for you guys today. I have with me IronTaxi from OWI. We're going to be talking a little bit about the dev team and kind of how things are handled by Offworld in general. So, Iron, you want to just go ahead and introduce yourself here?
Talks with you guys in the past with some of our guys, but I don't think I've done something with you guys ops directly. Or I have, but not in this kind of format. But yeah, so my name is IronTaxi. My real name is Chris Gregg. One of the founders of Squad, and currently doing basically mod development and business development. I've kind of moved on from the core team. I am still doing kind of a senior producer role, so I'm just helping out, especially on releases and things like that. But my primary role now is business development and mod development.
All right, awesome.
That's me.
It's really good to hear that you guys are starting to work on that stuff. Or I know that you're not just starting, but but really.
Yeah, no, totally. It's actually, yeah, it's a really relevant point actually. Like we needed to get to this point, both like I guess structurally, i.e., our business is formed enough, or like we're stable enough structurally. We also needed to get to this point financially, and then we needed to get to this point where Squad was, core features were stabilized enough that I could do this kind of stuff. And I think that has just kind of happened in the past maybe 3 or 4 months. We finally, it feels like a much more cohesive, stable, I don't know, less bottlenecked team, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Well, that's definitely good to hear, for sure. All right, well, I mean, let's just let's get into it. I'm really interested to know, because I know most of the original team, you guys started as PR modders. That's right?
Most of the core guys that we started with at least had some hand in PR, and that was, I mean, for a couple different reasons. Obviously, one is the inspiration largely came from Project Reality, for Merlin to start it, or Will Stahl. At least 2, if not 3, failed PR2 teams. So obviously I was already invested. So he came to me with that, and I came on board really quickly. And then just by the nature of who we knew already and what we needed to get done, i.e., building something that was based on Project Reality, inspired by, I went recruiting with people we already knew. So Z Trooper was a great example, who leads the art team now, and Ghost Dance, who does the environment, and a couple other guys. I just, I knew them. I had worked with them. I already knew what they were capable of. So, and I knew they'd probably work for cheap. It's like cheap meaning nothing, basically. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, who's really invested, and I can just like go hook with this crazy, far too aspirational project that they're gonna have to dump a year into and probably get nothing out of.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that there was like some really valuable learning experiences from those failed attempts at making a game?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious what not to do was all over that place. Actually, it's a good question, because it did inform some of my conditions. Actually, when Will came to me for this project, I had conditions, and one of the conditions was we weren't going to approach it like PR2. Couple of the elements being, one was PR2. Most of the PR2 projects were not meant to be commercial, so that was obviously like, we had the intention to be commercial. It needed to be serious. Yeah. The other one was actually rapid prototype. I think I can't remember what the goal was, but I think it was 6 months. I said to him, if we don't have players in a map, multiplayer, shooting guns in 6 months, we just wrap it up.
Oh, wow.
So that was kind of putting ourselves in a position where that had to happen in the first 6 months, and we needed to go like start getting it out to people and getting people in our community kind of built up. And that was a condition for me. Mm-hmm. Upsetting the tone where we had to have things functional, I guess, was the bottom line. We weren't going to just like, hope that things would work out after a year of working or something like that, right?
Yeah. Do you think that like that having the players in map and having like was the having a functional game right off the bat like just super important from trying to understand where players were at or like where the game was at, like what made that so super important?
Was because we were using an untested engine. UE4 was absolutely brand new. The day it came out, we started using it.
Oh wow.
So, just from my own experiences, like we didn't even know if the engine was going to be capable of doing what we wanted to do. So we set a bunch of measure points, and it was like 4-kilometer terrains, obviously 100 players, which we still haven't hit, but I do think is like I've never, I'm literally drooling at how close we're going to be to it after 416. I'm just like, I can't wait. So I had a bunch of conditions, I guess, that we had to hit in the engine. And even initially, there was a lot of them that the engine wouldn't hit. For example, 4-kilometer terrains. Couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. The reason we did Logar Valley is because it was planned to be very deserty and have almost no trees originally. I couldn't put more than a few thousand trees in the world when the engine first came out. It would just chug, it'd be death. So we had to, by design, build all of our components. Yeah, it's interesting because we had to, by design, wait for the engine to mature, but we also couldn't wait. Mm-hmm. So we had to take whatever we could and get it working and make sure that there was something there, essentially, that there was interest.
Do you think that having to mature with the engine itself, like having the game built with the engine, do you think that's been kind of like a net positive for Squad and the team?
Depends what you're asking. Has it been a net positive in terms of getting some neat tech to play with? Absolutely. Has it been a positive in terms of time lost? Absolutely not. No way. I mean, we're talking grades alone. So we've been in early access for 18 months now. Mm-hmm. At least 3 months, if not 4, has been spent fighting the engine, basically.
Oh, wow.
Fixing broken crap. Mm-hmm. At least 3 months. And I think that speaks a lot to, obviously, as everybody says in software, it's like, you're not going to give accurate timelines because it's just, you can't do it. And I think it's one of our motivations for locking down the engine for now as well with this next upgrade to 416, is we need to stop fighting that. We've sized up, we've increased the programming team dramatically, and we need to just consolidate, and we want Squad to perform well. That's the biggest thing. We're ready to finally buckle down and rip into all the stuff that's making it perform poorly. So we need a stable engine to do that. So net positive, probably not. Would we have changed it? Probably not. We knew we were going to suffer with the engine, and we've been in close communication with Epic the whole time. And if they've got a quote unquote bad release, we can usually sense it, and we talk to them, and they're like, yeah, you should probably wait and go to the next upgrade. So we're like, okay, cool. Yeah. But yeah, c'est la vie. We've had some really crappy upgrades.
Oh wow, yeah. So going back a little bit, you said that when you were first approached, you had some ideas of people that you wanted to bring in, on the original kind of core team when you guys were just getting started. Had you known all of these people just via the PR modding team or other sorts of modding teams, or were there anybody that you had known in real life, or just kind of via the internet?
Primarily all Project Reality. That was if it wasn't the current connection, it was at least the original connection. Mm-hmm. Teacher Burrs Tom from Denmark. We had become good friends in Project Reality, so we'd actually met in person, which is funny because I was I think he would have been in his teens when I met him, and I was in my late 20s or something like that. So I went to Denmark for a game jam. Just flew over there, hung out with him for the weekend. Me and him traveled to Italy and England together, just a little flight road trip thingy. So I actually knew him fairly well, which is funny because he was one of the hardest people to convince to join the project at the time, which was really funny considering it's like he should have been, this is his bread and butter. This is the kind of genre that he lives for. He's a shooter and all that other kind of stuff. So yeah, it's quite funny that he could have very easily said no, and it could be somebody else in his shoes, essentially.
Huh. So, I mean, you've got Z Trooper from Denmark. You're out in Vancouver right now. I think you guys have the office out in Vancouver. How many guys are like actually at the office?
We have 8 in here now. It's soon to be about 11. We just moved to a slightly bigger space, although still very, very frugal. It's quite funny.
Mm-hmm.
About 8, yeah, going to be 11. We got a couple guys who are relocating, like the effects guy Bruno is in the process of relocating from South Africa to Canada.
Oh wow!
We're hoping he doesn't freeze the first winter. We might have to thaw him out a few times. He'll be like, "What did I sign up for?" And I was like, "We told you it was cold, man." We'll see. Dave from Spain, who's actually our project lead now for Squad, Trav. He's thinking about coming over here, and a couple other guys, basically. So we are going to slowly consolidate, but not by no means is it. We're not requiring it of ourselves or the team because it's all worked fine. We're in 17 countries right now with like 40, all included with support members, something like 46 people. Remote. I think we're just finding that there's some roles that are nicer to have in-house, sitting next to each other, like programmers.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one. Yeah. That's about it.
Yeah, that's like really spread out. Do you find that like there's always a dev that's kind of up and working? Or
yeah, that's exactly. It never sleeps. It's 24 hours. One of the reasons I work on Sundays to Thursdays is I offset my rather than having the Friday, because some people work over the weekends, and then there's like they work on the weekend plus their time difference, depending on the country they're in.
Mm-hmm.
So it just makes sure if I'm working Sunday that I overlap everybody at least once a week, kind of thing, or something like that. So I get a chance to touch base with people, and obviously Sunday's a lot quieter too. I can just spend time chatting with people and checking on the project and things like that. We're doing interviews with squad ops.
Hey, there you go. Other than like wanting to have the programmers tend to be more consolidated geographically, are there any other sort of like disadvantages to having a team that's so spread out?
Yeah, I think I've talked about this before with some other people. I think it's very department specific, because I think in large part the core mechanism or the core machine of an art team can probably work fairly remotely. Like if we've got a guy working on a tank or something like that, not that I'm saying somebody's working on a tank. I'm just saying if somebody was working on a tank, that where they are necessarily. They can still get feedback. We use Slack. They can get feedback. They can be in touch with their art lead. Like there aren't that many barriers in that respect. I've never really thought through what the advantages would be, except for maybe, I don't know. I guess if they were in a physical office, they'd probably get less work done because artists are very social, and they're just like they'd be chatting away and be like, "Hey, you want to go for a lunch? Yeah, let's go for lunch." All that stuff kind of doesn't exist, right?
Mm.
Yes, for some people, like now that it's full time and everybody's getting paid regular industry salaries and things like that. For some people, it's a hard transition to just be at home every day, be working from the same place that they're sleeping, eating, all that. For other people, absolutely no problem whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And they just love it. Like, the job where you don't have to put any pants on is not a bad job. Like you're never required to put pants on. So I think that's one of the features we always put in job ads. No pants required.
That's great.
Yeah, that's, as I said, it's very departmental.
Okay.
Like I said, the one with the programmers, we're just finding that they need a more cohesive structure. They need to be a lot more structured. I guess that's the easiest way to say it. So, or they want to be a lot more structured, so that the advantages for artists are not considered an advantage for the programmers a lot of the time. They need to be very connected to each other and understand what's going on and all the stages and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I can imagine just trying to kick bugs out of the game and stuff.
Yeah, just
Be
technical issues. We had a big problem early on where we would have like a team that would be working on the weekend part time, and then the core team, and they wouldn't get information to each other for whatever reasons. Lack of systems on our part, let's say,
Mhm.
um, and they would replicate work over the weekend or fix the same problem twice, even though we were using tracking software. It would just happen.
Yeah.
The something wouldn't get checked off, and then it leads to frustration, especially with programmers. And even factionalization. You end up with these two groups who are always scratching against each other a little bit, which we want to kind of work to eliminate.
All right. Is there any plan to really try and bring the whole team together at some point as you guys kind of grow as a company, or do you plan to still kind of stay, allow people to stay geographically spread out?
I think my philosophy, having helped form the team a lot from the first day, is I I ask the people what's going to make their life happy and satisfactory, and that's what we do. I'm not going to prescribe what we think we need to do. If obviously, if the person like Tom, for example, in Denmark, he likes living in Denmark. Actually, we're living in Sweden right now with his girlfriend, but Denmark and Sweden are very similar countries next to each other. He really doesn't have an aspiration to move to North America. Totally fine, of course. Like if he's got goals that he can hit, and we have no problem. He's actually the art lead as well. If there's no issues there, why would it matter? It doesn't really matter. So, we just look at what makes that person happy. That is actually the goal. Like, how can we keep that person happy?
Yeah,
I guess is a big. Yeah.
I think that's like a great mentality to have. And I think people end up a lot more productive when they're happy with what they're doing anyways.
That's something where it's, even if I was to impose, or we were to impose structure, or even try to, I think it would just be a net negative anyhow. It wouldn't, like you're saying, they wouldn't be happy to be forced into situations. It just doesn't. I don't think it makes sense nowadays. Like I said, especially for certain roles,
Mm-hmm.
it's not. It doesn't really add any benefits. In fact, I've got somebody to go stay with in Sweden if I want to, so that's actually not a bad thing. 17 countries I can go to, except for Canada, and stay with somebody. So I don't know if they want me. I don't know if they want me there, but
All right, so you got the team together and you got a working, players in map fighting each other, shooting each other. Is this about when you guys decided to kickstart the game, or did you know that you were always gonna probably go down that route?
because I would say we had it in mind. This person on my end, I actually wasn't an advocate for the Kickstarter. What I saw in the video game industry, I thought it was smarter to just go directly to Steam. So we went back and forth a lot about a Kickstarter. The one big thing about a Kickstarter is the physical impact if you fail.
Mm-hmm.
Not succeeding at a Kickstarter is really, usually quite bad and has a really negative outcome. Yeah. Not only do you get no money, you feel like you actually failed.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, as you may be well aware, what started happening in Kickstarter is people just setting ridiculously low goals to make sure that they got some money, even though it wasn't enough money to fund the game. So we obviously struggle with that too, because that's a completely valid, if your company needs to get money, this is the way you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Set a low Kickstarter goal that you can hit. We didn't want to do that either, because that just felt, incomplete. I guess it would be dishonest, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it wouldn't have hit our goals. We were like, we sat down for the 50th meeting about it, and we literally, everybody was like, okay, we're doing this thing. And we're like, okay, let's do it. We actually had one guy end up leaving, like, as soon as the Kickstarter kicked off, or just before, because he didn't think it was going to make it. He just disappeared on us, and we were like, okay. So there was a lot of tension. It was really tense. Like, people didn't know if their efforts were going to be worth their time and all that kind of stuff, I guess. All those very human emotions. But it did obviously really well. It was successful. It was extremely stressful. It was a very, very tense, stressful couple month or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
Set up the business so that after the Kickstarter, we could continue to do pre-sales up to the release on Steam. And we actually made more revenue in that period than we did in the Kickstarter.
Oh, wow.
Completely unexpected. So the Kickstarter, the period after the Kickstarter finished to December 15th when we launched, which was about 3 or 4 months, we made more than the Kickstarter itself, which was really nice because when we got to Steam, obviously, we were really well positioned, like way less tension. So our Steam early access release was probably less tense than our Kickstarter. Or grand there to like backstop the all the roles, and people were starting to get paid and things like that.
I find that so interesting to hear. Do you think that there was just like a lot of word of mouth about the game from, people seeing the Kickstarter, and then, I mean, after the Kickstarter, some of those goals and some of those rewards were people getting in game, playing in like closed pre-alpha and stuff like that. Do you think that like word of mouth played a hand in that?
Element of that, absolutely. I mean, and to some degree, it was planned by us, like to have that kind of structure. But the one big thing is our Kickstarter. We had a playable game already, and we were showing footage of a playable game. So you're kind of right in the sense that the anticipation was already high, and all those people who had already backed were actually in playing during that pre-sales period. Mm-hmm. So there was a pretty. I think the big difference between some other projects who've tried. We know some people who have tried to do that and it hasn't been as successful, but I think the biggest thing has been the immediacy. Like people were able to back and get into the pre-alpha or the pre-alpha like really soon. It wasn't something that was going to materialize in a year or 2 years. It was something that was going to materialize in like a couple weeks. So I think it was those people saw it as a good purchase essentially.
Oh yeah, I think after the Kickstarter ended, it was maybe it was just a couple weeks before those keys started going out and people were getting downloads for the game.
So I think that was a fundamental, partially lucky, partially our hard work, but it all just kind of had a really good, I don't want to say synergy, but I'm going to say it. It had a very good synergy. Kind of 1 + 1 = 3, and I think that was everybody had a good feeling at the time, and like customer base and all that kind of stuff.
All right. Well, you said that the Kickstarter was a bit of a. It was there was a lot of tension involved as to whether you guys should or whether you could successfully kickstart the game. Was the team kind of surprised as to the success that you guys were getting through that Kickstarter and through the pre-sales? Or did you think that, like, we have a reliable player base in the PR community, and we think that they'll want to switch to something like this?
A lot of time on our goal for the Kickstarter. So I think the Kickstarter goal was smart. It was a combination of what we would actually need and what we thought we could actually get. So it was, looking at these two extremes and deciding, trying to be very, very realistic, I guess. Even to the point, like I said, we didn't want to lowball it because then obviously the side effect is we don't actually have the money to deliver on what we're planning. Team, I know this for a fact, the example of the guy who left. If you had pulled our team ahead of time from the Kickstarter, you would have gotten answers all the way from like 100 or maybe just actually failing. You would have got answers all the way from failing and only doing 100 grand to people thinking we were going to do a Kickstarter that was worth 2 million.
Huh.
Nobody, including myself, had any clue, basically. We were just doing our best, being as diligent as we could and, using whatever data was available. But at the same time, like, it was really funny to come out of the Kickstarter with a mix of some people who were like elated, some people were like, that's exactly what we needed, and I'm pleased, but there's work to be done, and others who were shattered at only doing like 350 grand. Because that's not how successful Kickstarters look like according to them. And it was really interesting to manage kind of the psychology of everybody, because everybody had different things in their head, whether they admitted it or not, which was really funny. People had visions of grandeur or whatever it may be. So yeah, it was interesting. It was very, very interesting.
All right. So you guys kickstart the game. It's pretty successful. You get pre-sales, and then you guys get yourselves onto Steam. I you had mentioned Steam before. Early access was always the plan.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
No, we just like, yeah, since day one, basically. That was actually the goal. The goal was early access.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you think that does that kind of come from the coming from PR, the modding mindset of like, we're going to release what we have, and then we're going to keep updating as new mechanics, as new systems, as new assets get made. We're just going to put them in the game. Like, do you think
Definitely.
that carried over?
Yep, I would say a lot of that is, I was growing up like, how old is PR now? 12, 13 years old? So I would have been mid to late 20s. Eggman, for much of the project when I was there, Eggman, who's still in our community now, was the project lead there. And he had a pretty belief in iterate as fast as you possibly can, or just put things out, like get something, put it out. If it's a placeholder, that's fine. You'll replace it later and just go. And I think that was like for me anyhow, that was one of the things that formed Project Reality. I don't know if it's what it like helped it consolidate into what it is now, but at least that first half of Project Reality was largely built around that. I mean, I guess I would say the success of Project Reality was largely built around that initially. Was that you just if you want to put in a new faction, put in the new faction. If it doesn't look the part yet, it doesn't look the part yet. If you want to put in a weapon system, put it in. Just derp it in for the time being. I don't think we went that like full mod on it on Squad, obviously. To be honest, I would have, but I was strongly opposed on our team. Mm-hmm. I thoroughly believe that we could have just derped in whatever and just went with it. A great example would have been like the medic dragging.
Okay.
Being able to drag people for the medical system. We could have derped that in easily. We could have put in a janky system that would have done that, mm-hmm. But I think there was just, it's a double-edged sword in early access, obviously. I guess I'm just not as afraid of it and people's impressions about things like that. I don't have the same fear that some of the people share in terms of like keeping the image,
Yeah.
I would have just been like, yeah, put the dragging in, man. We'll see how it works. If it's crap, we'll take it out, But again, that's just me speaking for me. So,
mm-hmm. So
definitely the mod mentality. Yeah.
So I feel like you end up on the side of the spectrum where you just want to get things out there, and it sounds like there are other people on the team that really don't want to put something unfinished into the game yet. How do you guys decide on what kind of placeholders do get put into the game? Like the most obvious one I can think of are maps that aren't in their final iteration, or like fobs that don't have, like you've iterated on the fob mechanics and how the counters work and how logistics works a number of times. Like, how do you decide, okay, this is in a state where we just want to get it out there?
I guess the short answer is, how long have you been playing Squad yourself?
I started playing Squad in that closed pre-alpha. I kickstarted the game.
How that evolution has happened. Are you 70% satisfied with the process that we've gone through?
I'd say yeah. I think it's important to get the yeah. Oh yeah, I can see. I think it's so important to get the community moving towards the direction, at least mentality wise, where you want the final game to be. So like, people are talking about how it's such a good infantry game, but I know you guys you're going for combined arms. So as soon as you can get vehicle assets in, like, you try and get them in.
Within reason, obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the reality is amongst our leads anyhow, and our project leads, and then like, yeah, whatever our production team, it's always a bargaining game. Like almost constantly. I would say actually we're really good at it now, so there's far less bargaining. But in the in the earlier days, yeah, there was way more storming, way more like heated arguments about what should go in and what should stay out, and how we could do a first version of something, and how we exactly what you're describing. There wasn't unity, absolutely not, and probably for it's probably good that there wasn't. It was probably a healthy process where we've come out now, and it's a lot easier to decide, I suppose. It's a lot more evident. We've learned, like, what is too derpy and what's going to be okay with the community. I don't think we really hold anything back per se. Like, the animation system is a great example where it's simply not done yet. Not only is it not done, we're waiting for the engine. This 416 upgrade was a great example where a lot of stuff we've been kind of waiting on, and we didn't know when Epic is going to deliver this stuff. We can look at 416 and now and go, okay, most of the stuff that we wanted to be 100% sure was in there is in there now. Mm-hmm. You know what? They did 416 much faster than we expected. Epic did. They delivered it really quickly. So we were like, let's just adjust the schedule. Let's just hold off. We'll put everything on the back burner, bring 416 up, stabilize it. And then we can finally finish the animation system and finish the inventory system. But, we know how it's going to look in public if people don't really understand that process. They're literally just going to say, this animation system is taking forever. And we're like, well, you know what? We're willing to live with that because I think everybody will be happy with what happens at the end of the day. So,
do you think that there's any like mechanics, systems, or assets that you maybe put out there too early, and you kind of wish that you had waited maybe another iteration or two before you released it to the public?
I think stability is really the only thing that's really, there's been periods where the game's been a little unbalanced or things have been a little bit OP or something like that. But statistically and financially, like data-driven, those things have been far less impactful on the viability of the business than performance. Performance, at the end of the day, most people are not experts on the game. They just want to play it. They don't analyze it that deeply like a lot of the vets do. And I'm talking the people who, the core players of the game. So really for them, performance is far more important than what a particular community thinks about a particular weapon, to be honest. Yeah.
Is that why performance tends to get such a front seat in terms of priorities? I
think a lot of people would argue that what you just said is not true. So, no, we've known, like, you can't just go back and you can't stop and optimize all the time. It's just not going to happen. You're literally just going to be optimizing things that become obsolete, and then you'll go through another round of optimization. So to a certain degree, like, we did that one big optimization pass, and it made quite a big impact. It's a lot, especially on the servers. The servers became a lot more viable. That's when we increased the player count, all that kind of stuff. That was intentional. It's funny. We just have to kind of feel the point where that needs to happen, and kind of stretch it as far as we can with the community, to be honest, just out of necessity. Because even now, like I said, we're coming up to 416. We pulled kind of 416 to the front of our schedule. Mm-hmm. Natural place to stop and do optimization now. It's just like, this is essentially our short-term final version of the engine, at least for 6 to 8 months, I would imagine. So this is going to be a great time to just focus on optimization as we get those last systems in. And I think you guys are going to see, like, very, very significant changes. Mm-hmm. The ability of the game to run, and that has a lot to do with the engine improvements as well.
All right. Do you think that there's eventually a point where you'll have to tell players that, like, hey, there's not really much we can do past this point, and if you can't play it, then you might just need an upgrade system, PC to your system or something?
Yeah, I think we're kind of, and we've never said otherwise. We're not trying to get the game to 120 FPS. That's a big game like this. Like, maybe someday, but that's not really our goal. my goal from the environment side, when I was more leading the mapping and things like that, we've always wanted to get our median system to 60 FPS. That's our goal. If you get more than that ever, great. That's not our goal. You getting more than 60 FPS is gravy, essentially. Now, we want that to obviously happen when there's 80, actually 100 players on the server, people getting a median of 60 FPS, plus or minus a few frames in combat. That would be our goal. So really, we don't have much. We don't plan to go much farther than that. I mean, if we can, we will. Feel successful, I guess, when we've hit that goal.
All right. So you said that there was a lot of discussions and maybe some heated arguments over some unfinished, mechanics or systems being thrown in. It sounds like there's a lot of discussion going on, like amongst the team. Are most of these decisions made as kind of a group effort, or is like the project lead saying like, look, my final word is this system's going out because I think the players need it or the game needs it?
Structurally, as a company, we are 11 shareholders. So there's 11 of us that own the business. We don't have any investors, as you're aware, or maybe you aren't aware, but we have no investors or anything like that. So at the top level, there's 11 shareholders who ultimately kind of guide the direction. Now, we don't really use the shareholder body as a day-to-day kind of guidance, because that would be insane, because 11 people making decisions is crazy. So we do have a board of directors, which kind of guides the global strategy, I guess, which is 4 of the shareholders who sit on the board. And then we have the leads of all the departments, and including game design as well, which is Sergeant Ross. So that is really where those decisions are made, in that lead group. So that's probably more limited to like six or 7 people, I guess. Usually the features that are going to be included are already planned. They're already laid out. They're already planned in a document by the lead of a particular section. It's usually more whether they make it in good shape or not, up to the deadlines that we have for ourselves. So that really actually determines it more than, I guess it's just the readiness of that thing. And then when I say readiness, I usually mean like code readiness. Is this thing absolutely broken, or does it function well?
Okay.
Very, very gray line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that discussion.
Like deployables.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Deployables have always been like that. I was going to say deployables have always been like on the borderline of janky in not functioning 100%, or like, something weird going on all the time. Like, I think you're probably aware when you get out of like you get out of the deployable weapon and it's like 90 degrees to where you were. Yeah. And like, that's just never been solved. It's just never been solved. Like literally something we haven't had time to fix. It's a problem. It needs to be fixed. It's been in the game for 6 months or 8 months. Yeah.
Do you find that is it often that you guys are releasing things that you think, you know what, it might be a little bit buggy, but we're just going to fix it in like a patch, a couple weeks down the line? Or do you guys decide we'll hold off on the major version release and we'll get it in with a patch?
I think we're probably, but we're also trying to get little things out as well. I think you guys have probably noticed there's been a lot more micro releases in the last couple months, especially with content, like putting out maps and things like that halfway through a major cycle. Identify things that can go out and are fine and aren't as integrated into the rest of the game that they're just going to like destroy stuff, and get those things out. For things that are way more integrated into all the different systems, we're getting more comfortable with waiting. And that's what we're trying to, that's the kind of balance that we're trying to come to now. We should get improvements to you guys faster, and keep features and finish them, basically.
Okay.
And try to release less bugs, essentially. But improvements, we should just get them to you guys.
I like it. How do you guys prioritize what's getting the most effort at any given time? Like, is that like a big design decision from those kind of 7 or 8 guys, or is it just naturally dictated by like what's going on in the community in the game?
I would say at a really high level, everything is already planned. Um, we have the majority of, especially feature-wise, um, and content-wise, actually. So like maps, all the art, like the factions and the remaining faction improvements and all that kind of stuff, like the British. This stuff is already planned. We have timelines for it. Obviously, the timelines move, but they're already planned. So there isn't really a lot of decisions in that respect. I would say it's always the code side. The code is the bottleneck. The code is the limiter. The code facilitates features. So that is the one that is kind of constantly moving around. And I would say on like, a month to month basis, we're constantly shifting priorities on coding. One of the reasons we looked at where the business is and looked at where the business is financially and made a decision to really expand and spend a lot more money on the coding team. Finally, the game has continued to do well this year. In fact, it's even accelerated in sales this past year. So we were able to look at the finances and be like, okay, we're not gonna screw ourselves over by over hiring at this point because we can afford it. Finally, and we've also got X number of development months or years in the bank as well, so that we're not gonna fail to finish Squad as well. Like right now, we're in a position where we know we can finish this game. There's actually no question whatsoever whether we have the funds to do so.
That's so great to hear.
So well, that's why we're comfortable now. We're like, okay, can we afford to bring on 3 or 4 more programmers for the next year or whatever it may be? And we're like, yeah, we can. Okay, let's do it. It's this bottleneck out of the water. So that's what we're hoping. We're hoping we can really impress people with the next 6 to 12 months kind of thing.
Do you find that bringing in like such a large kind of new number of new members to the team, does that create any sort of like workflow problems that like you got to get everybody acclimated to how you guys are working?
I think so far, I guess the or is just we work on happiness and harmony a lot. We're not a conflict or confrontation driven company. We really like everybody being harmonious is what we work on all the time. We have a very strict no asshole rule. We don't tolerate it. Decide you're going to be an asshole every day, you're not welcome at this company. So I guess number one priority is making sure, well, obviously in the interviewing process, making sure that we don't bring in people who are like that. And we haven't. But getting the new people in is just, we don't have high expectations initially. So we just let them feel out the position and, build the relationships and help them do so and monitor it and just, make sure they're happy essentially. Like, do they like literally to the point where it's like, somebody's relocating. Do you like the apartment you're living in? Is there anything else, that would make you happier or make this role easier for you to enjoy and be productive? That helps all of this other stuff. It basically oils or lubricates the machinery so that if they're learning something hard because they've just joined the company, that becomes a lot easier to do. Their job should be the easy part of their life. So that's so far so good. We really focused on, especially this cycle of hiring senior developers. We went very far to make sure we were getting people with very good industry experience, very talented. We interviewed a lot of people. We rejected a lot of people. So this, hopefully the end result is that we see, it's not like we're adding 4 programmers. It's like we've multiplied our programming team by 3 or 4 in terms of abilities. Graphics programmer. Yeah, we've hired a graphics programmer, really, really, really neat specializations. So we're hoping that you guys, I know you guys will start to see the results of that stuff as those guys spin up. Probably, I think the biggest impacts will probably be, into like September, into that kind of period. Once we get into the fall, I think that's when, especially when you guys are going to see the impact of the work that these guys are doing, already starting to do right now.
Wow, Well, I'm sure the community can't wait for that. Do you think
It's gonna be exciting.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Do you think that there's has it been hard to mesh the kind of the really good like industry talent with the guys that have come from a history of modding? Like not that those guys are amateurs by any stretch of the
No, I
imagination.
understand. Yep.
What I mean, your team was able to do with Project Reality and what you guys were able to squeeze out of that engine, like takes a great deal of talent and coding. But like, is there any like has the meshing been fine with that?
I think it has typically been fine, and I think that is also a function of that. Just we get like that no asshole rule where we just don't kind of having that level of friction. I guess I'm just trying to think of any examples, but this thing is just giving trust and respect from the beginning. You don't have to earn it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't operate where somebody has to come in and earn the trust and respect, whether they're the mod guy or the industry guy or whatever. We're just going to give you the respect. We'll give you the trust. That usually helps if that's kind of like everybody sees that from all different sides. They would never come in with the mentality that this guy is any less talented or more talented or has any issues or does things differently. They seem to just work it out. We don't have a lot of friction on that level. That being said, we're bringing in a big group of people. We actually hired some more artists, some more environment guys, and particularly the programming team, can do community manager. So we are actually going through a big cycle of growth right now. So how this cycle goes, essentially, it's just kind of started right now. But it's a smart question because it's completely valid, of course.
All right. Well,
Times, yeah.
I think we'll get to our last kind of big subject here, and that's the community, because I think that you guys are not wholly unique in how open you guys are with your community, but I mean, you guys were really the first group that I saw that were just so like active in all of your forums, in like the various discords, in just everywhere, like the subreddit. We see like dev response tags on so many of these so many of the posts in the subreddit. Like, was that a plan for the team, like from the beginning, that you guys would be like that, or is that just again something that's kind of it comes from being modders and you started as part of a community and you just didn't know how to not be a part of the community?
I would say that from my end in kind of forming the business from different industries, not the video game industry,
Mm-hmm.
I already kind of had that philosophy that in my previous businesses, if a customer would call me at 11 o'clock at night, I would answer it.
Mm-hmm.
If I had a customer who had concerns or any kind of issues, I would answer the phone. Because trust me, people remember that. That's a really important impression to leave on your customer. So I think we did have some discussions early on about how open and closed we would be, but I think I was of the mentality that we needed to be as open as possible, and it would be painful, and you would it's a double-edged sword. You can be too open, and that's happened to us on occasions where a dev's gotten into an open fight with somebody in a forum, myself included. So there's definitely some tempering that needs to go on there, but I think the net benefit for us has been that people, as you said, and I think it's made an impression, and a lot of not only do we say we're listening to the community feedback, I think they actually see it. Periodically, things that people are talking about is exactly what happens. We have an internal Slack feed that feeds everything in social media to us. And I would say there's at least, definitely myself, but if not quite a few devs that I like, because I work in the marketing and business side of OWI and Squad. I read every single thing that pops up there, everything. Like, there's nothing that I don't look at in some capacity and at least read. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a two-way street in terms of we've opened up the pipe for you guys. We've also come forward and been an open, voice to talk to. But I think the benefit is we know each other well. That is the end result. And I think it's been good for us to especially get trust out of a lot of people. Like the ones, I know the people in our community who trust us implicitly. 110%. They understand even when we screw things up, which is good. That's what we need. We need the strong player base. We have a lot of things we want to do in the future. We're already kind of in that stage where we can look forward to the future and say, what else can we do that this community base would like to play? That might be as not abstract as in 2020 making Squad 2. Who knows? But the point being that, like, yeah, we're growing with you guys as a community. We have no intention of leaving you guys behind or not bringing you with us into more, future. Essentially, like we want to remain a community. We want everybody to be part of OWI, and through Squad initially, but who knows in the future? Like, there's a lot of things we could do. We know we have a lot of experts. We have a lot of interests. We have people who are interested in this type of gameplay. Mm-hmm. There might be lots of directions for us to go with the community, and we could have, like Project Reality, we could end up having 10, 12 years of gameplay out of these kind of projects, which would be amazing. Like, for me as a gamer, that's amazing. Just thinking that I can rely on, the enjoyment for my gaming life for 10 years on a single studio, essentially, just doesn't happen anymore, or it rarely happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the current development cycle for games at most major studios tends to be like, we'll support the game for a year, maybe 2, but they need to get their team onto something else, and
I
making a new game.
There's nothing. I don't think there's any crime in that. It's not. I don't know. It has a bit of a bad rap, I guess, with the community, right? Which I get as well. I think really our goal is, can we deliver all our promises on Squad? Like, if Squad's doing well and we have a strong community, of course we're going to keep developing it. But can we also start preparing for other things, like other things that people want to play? When somebody says to me, for example, they want to play a zombie version or a sci-fi version or whatever that may be, it doesn't mean we're necessarily going to provide it, but part of the integration with modding and the we talked about in our monthly update is the off-world core, which is basically all of our systems for making the games. We want to provide those to indie teams or to whoever might want to use them. And that's not just modding for Squad, but that's like if somebody wants to make a PUBG clone on our framework, and it's going to integrate a lot of the core, teamwork and integrated VoIP and all that kind of stuff in our like vehicle systems. Yeah, absolutely, man. Let's go for it. Let's help drive them. Let's give them the tools to do it. Because I think one of the big gaps in the market, especially nowadays, is obviously mod support is dying. It's not very common. Actually, it depends on the genre, but yeah, generally speaking, it's not in the company's best interest financially, usually, to support modding. So they just don't. I think they choose not to do it anymore. That in that gap, there is, in a sense, it's getting easier for some people to make games. But if you have a gap, like you don't know how to code vehicle systems, you're never going to make a game with vehicles in it. Hopefully, what we can do is we can provide smaller indie teams who don't have all of the components, i.e. they don't have a big team of programmers or something like that. They can take what we can give them and make something fun out of it. So whether it becomes a commercial game or they just release it as a free-to-play game or whatever they want to do with it, it's not really the objective. Kind of like the systems we have in Squad become a template for making a bunch of other fun games. And I mean, to a certain degree, that's a little bit of our own selfishness in the sense that we just spent 3 years building all this stuff. And we're like, okay, so what do we do now? We just put it in Squad and that's it forever. And it's like, we just spent 3 years, like blood, sweat, and tears building all this core system when there's tons of teams out there who would love to use this base to build their own super cool game that maybe no Squad player will ever play, which is totally fine. That's not the point. But yeah, we want to keep that going. We want to use OWI and this community as a seed to like spread this as an expectation of gaming, communication, teamwork, all the integrated VoIP and all that kind of stuff.
That's
We want
so
that.
great to
We
hear.
want that to be normal.
Yeah, I mean, it's so great being a community member and seeing all this openness and all this support for the community. And I think it makes it so much more painful when you see somebody that's maybe raging on the subreddit about
It's fine.
things that,
We get
yeah,
it.
you
Yeah.
know, it can be hard when like you see things that were in like some sort of monthly update like maybe a year ago and there hasn't been much of an update on it since, or something like that. Like I can understand some of the like frustratedness that can come sometimes, but
Absolutely.
I think it, from a community, I don't understand how people can be upset that we're getting this info, because I think it's not the norm, and it's such an awesome way to feel connected with the team, with the game, with the community, is being able to get like hyped about something we're seeing, you know, or talk about how it might change the game. And I think it produces a lot of really good discussion.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, and ideally, we'd like to. We always want to get excited with the community. We're as excited as well. So, sorry, what were we gonna say? Do
you think that like that openness has hurt development in any way? Like maybe having shown something too early and now like you may have to put in some work on something that wasn't quite ready, but the community's maybe like clamoring for it, so you guys decide to make it a little more of a priority than you would have? Or do you find that you just kind of, you know, stay the course and nope, this was a feature that we're not really planning on getting into the game for like maybe another 2 or 3 months, we just showed it maybe a little earlier than we should have?
Yeah, I don't think it's like, when I look, again, I'm a business guy. I'm very data driven. So I follow the sentiment in as much data as I possibly can, whether that's sales numbers or like concurrent player count or whatever it may be. Activity on like social media and Reddit and things like that. I don't think I think the net is always positive in that stuff. Obviously, we need to make decisions, and sometimes we don't make the right ones, to show something off. But I hope, for the vast majority of people, we've just built, a relationship where they know that we're not. There's no ill intent, I suppose, is the best way to describe it. The one thing we're doing like really hard. I myself haven't dialed back from 60 hours a week for 3 years probably. But it's absolutely fantastic. It's a great job to have. I never get bored. That's the one thing. Absolutely never boring. But yeah, I mean, I think we're driving harder than people actually even think we are. The one that always absolutely I'll tell you the one that always drives us up the wall, and it's just like, this one just always blows my mind. Once a year, we tell everybody in the community we're going to take a few weeks off. We do it. It's the end of this year. It's the end of July. It's the end of the July, beginning of August. We're taking time off. We're going to go get to know our families again. We all actually meet up as a team. This year, we're going to meet in Vancouver this year. So we make sure once a year, everybody in the company gets together. As many people as we can possibly get there. I don't care how you feel about that. So don't put a Reddit thread up like telling us to get back to work every single year. What are you guys doing? Get back to work. You guys are so bloody lazy. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You know what? Come to the office. Come work with me. See how you do. Let's see how you handle the hours. So yeah, that one is one that always gets us. I'm just like mind blown when I see that post go up. When we tell people we're going on vacation, the fact that we tell the community that is something right there. But yeah, that one every single time, I'm just like, oh, you got to be joking me. Get a life. Anyhow, that was the side note. That was your insight into my true feelings. So, too funny.
Well, you're working on mod integration. Were mods always like a design plan for the game? Having started from essentially as being a sequel to a mod. Were you guys always planning on allowing for
Yeah.
modding?
For me personally, it has always been one of my conditions. It was one of my conditions, actually, in that I was talking about early on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it has always been one of my conditions. I can honestly say that not everybody on the team agrees with that. Um, I think there's definitely some members who think that it's a bit of a lack of focus, or it diminishes the ability for us to always just deliver everything. But my mentality has always been that the long-term benefits will far outweigh the sacrifice of time and manpower. Um, and it hasn't even gone. But then again, that's maybe just me trying to push towards my own goals. Um, but now we have Zach, one of our young programmers, and myself. It's our main job.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is getting that ready now, because we think the game's ready, and things will be changing less, so modders aren't going to make things that break. And as I mentioned before, we also want to extend that to things that are outside of Squad. So, Postscriptum is a great example, where initially when they showed up, talked to them a little bit in the Discord, and initially we thought they want to be a mod. That was not their intent at all, and I think that was largely our misfire of not understanding what they were doing here. And I didn't actually know them early on either. They came as part of them. A small group of them came as an established team or had already worked together, and they were looking for a platform to go commercial. And we didn't know that at the time. We just thought, oh, it's another team that showed up and wants to use the SDK to build a mod.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big transition, is once we got to know them a little bit. There's a couple other mod teams that are under the radar right now that people are not aware of, that are building substantial mods, or building, starting to work on something else very aspirational that you guys wouldn't even imagine if I told you. But whether any of that is ever going to transpire is a totally different story. But we definitely get contact from indie teams who want to work on stuff and are interested in using what we have.
Mm-hmm.
And that has always been one of our plans as well. Really early on, myself and Will especially, really, we love the idea of like an old counter source, like the source engine, how it was such a platform for
Yeah.
people to just do whatever they wanted. The thing we realized really quickly with UE4 is that just there wasn't enough there to get people like to a fully fledged game. For example, UE4 the box is not going to support 100 players. It's just not going to happen. So, or good vehicle systems, like even ours is not that good yet, but at the end of the road, hopefully it will be good. But the native stuff in UE4, absolutely not. You're not going to get a good vehicle system out of that.
Mm-hmm.
So our thought was always, along with modding, i.e., bring more life to Squad, we want a framework that any indie team like us could take and build a racing game out of if they want to. If somebody wants to build space racing game, we would like to provide a better framework than what already exists. VoIP is another great example, which I always mention.
Mm-hmm.
Like our integrated VoIP system is the best in UE4 right now. It does nothing else comparative exists. So having a team that has access to integrated VoIP that is completely configurable, they can do whatever they want with it, is just like massive. It really, hopefully, it will help some teams like plant the seed of games and franchises that don't even exist yet.
Mm-hmm. Was
Like a leg up.
Was it always a plan to create this kind of off-world core, or was it more like, yeah, people will make mods and do crazy and fun stuff with mods?
We were not really ready to. I would say the core wasn't ready to be realized yet early on, but that was definitely we've had the structure of that idea like built into our code for a year and a half to 2 years. So it's kind of been our long-term goal. And, the Postscriptum was an example where they're probably, I guess the best way to describe it is they're like our test case for what can be done and how far it can go. So we've obviously given them a little bit more attention in terms of like helping them get where they need to go. And the big step they're taking right now, and this is one of the things for us that is really important, is that they really Like if they have ideas and things that they've always wanted to do in their World War II Market Garden campaign, 100-player multiplayer game, we want to help them create their own vision, and we don't want it to we don't want it to just be Squad, obviously. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Squad World War II, to be honest. Like it's pretty cool. Like who knows? Imagine they went off and did like all the other campaign theaters and things like that, and they grew as a team. Fantastic. But we do want it to totally be their own flavor. That was really important to us from day one, and it's still important to us today. Is the biggest thing we help them with is making sure that they can realize their own distinct portions of what they want to do. Ultimately, we don't want, especially because imagine somebody just bringing out a modern shooter that was based on our framework, and it was called Squid or something. That's not what we want. We want people to be pushing the envelope. Ideally, because of the way that the core is built, they can release an SDK, so they can include modding out of the box. Framework to have their own modding framework. So if people want to build maps for Postscriptum in the future, that's just going to be there by design. If you think about the way that kind of exponentially, so if there's 4 or 5 titles based on this framework and they all have modding support out of the box, suddenly you've got 4 or 5 very distinct titles that all have integrated mod support. So I think the ability for the community to just build around these things is amazing. Like they can, if sci-fi is your thing, go off to the sci-fi game and like build your little heart out, or whatever it may be,
All right.
World War I would be amazing. You could all kinds of stuff that could be done, obviously.
Oh yeah.
World War I done like really well, like 100, 200 player World War I. Oh, that'd be fun. It'd be fun.
You're getting the history major in me all excited.
Yeah, imagine the IED explosions, like a version of those as artillery shots in a World War I game. Just yeah, it'd be fun. We'd have to have horses, though.
Oh, I wonder, could your vehicle system support horses in some way?
Don't know. There's only one way to find out, right?
Yeah,
it's called
gotta try it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, one of the being very realistic. And it's a massive game. We can do this stuff even if we wanted to. We simply don't have the capacity. Do we think that our framework is a great platform for like a World War II game or whatever game? Absolutely. Like, yeah, I mean, I hope so. It's Civil War game. Imagine taking all this and doing Civil War. If you love Civil War, man, this would be a great platform to start on. Because it would get you all the multiplayer and all that stuff just out of the box. But as OWI and as Squad team, are we ever going to do it? Absolutely not. There's no way that we can handle that scope. And I guess the really big thing for us is that, yeah, you can build a mod for Squad, but when you get an indie team who's actually, has money behind them or has the ability to like pull the whole team together, what you're going to get out of it is not even going to be comparable. You're going to get a much more comprehensive, very serious, substantial product as opposed to a mod, which is going to be additive to Squad or like, build onto Squad, which is totally cool. But I don't think you're going to get the same experience out of it. It's just not, it's just not possible. When a bunch of guys are hobbyists doing it over 2 years, it's just not going to be the same.
Yeah. I got one more question about mods, and then we'll start to wrap things up here. Are you or is the team at all worried that once like real modding implementation gets in, that the community will just kind of really flock in and start putting in systems that you guys are already planning as mods that you guys just haven't finished yet, and you guys will be like, pulling your hair out like, we have a plan for this. Why are you guys, you're making not what we envision for this system?
As you're probably aware, that's why we have 2 browsers. There's going to be a custom browser and there's going to be the vanilla browser. And if you want to do something in the custom side, knock yourself out. We're not gonna sweat over it at all. If there's not 24/7 knife servers, we probably haven't done our job, because it's just going to happen. Happened in Battlefield 2. So 24/7 knife servers. What?
We'll see the 24/7 shovel servers when they get in.
I honestly think it could go even farther, and I'm not afraid of that at all. Like I said, that's why we very intentionally from the beginning have locked down the core experience. And as you know, we license servers and all that stuff, and the reason is we know this actually from watching other big studios, and I hate to say it, but even EA is really good at locking down their vanilla experience. So they very intentionally control the experience the regular player has when they buy the game and load it, which is what we want to be able to do. Outside of that, it was the same way that I got into Project Reality, was dissatisfaction with Battlefield 2.
Mm-hmm.
And Project Reality came on my radar, and I never played Battlefield 2 ever again. If that's what, some people get satisfied. I mean, a great example might be like an all vehicle mode.
Mm-hmm.
Thing that somebody does as a mod very easily. Basically tank combat and all vehicles with no soldiers whatsoever. Knock yourself out on the custom server browser. Just go for it. Like I don't see any reason. I don't believe in any of this like divide the community stuff. If somebody does something that's so good that it divides the community, it's probably going to do more than divide the community. It's probably going to take it over. And that's just like, there's nothing we can do to stop that, nor would we try. Worst case scenario, we adopt it, we buy it off them. We're a business as well. That's always an option. If the core player base really wants something and it already exists out there, we're not going to go reinvent the wheel. It's just not, that would be stupid. But we'll see. I could be wrong as well.
All right.
Could be completely wrong. You never know.
Well,
I've seen both sides, so.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One final question for you, and that is, what's been your favorite part of developing this game?
I would say for me, actually, it's been the last 6 or 8 months. Period between the Kickstarter and 6 months ago, where we're still like, are we going to make it? Are we going to be able to deliver a lot of the stuff that we wanted to deliver? For me personally, only in the last 6 or so months has it become really clear that we are going to be able to deliver all that stuff that we want. At least technically speaking, it's going to take time and the schedule will change. But in terms of the ability to deliver, I don't have any questions anymore. I learned how to profile extensively in this engine for that very reason, to make myself more comfortable with the risks. I know how to profile really well in this engine now. I know exactly where our bottlenecks are. We pretty much know how we're going to hit them all. So I would say my excitement level has only gone up, and I'm probably enjoying it more now than I did ever before. Absolutely. There's been some rushes, like early access and Steam release, Kickstarter, all that stuff. But I think in terms of enjoyment, sheer enjoyment, I think, having the team now the size it is and the abilities it has and knowing what we're capable of now is probably the best part. I'm very proud of what we've done, actually.
That's so great to hear that things are really just looking up right now, and that you guys are feeling so confident. It feels good to hear from as a community member that you guys are really ready to go and really loving what you're doing.
I think it's actually gotten significantly better in terms of, it's experience too, right? We're into year 3 now. Mm-hmm. So we did some retarded crap 2 years ago, in the engine that was expensive, and we didn't even know we were doing it. We were just immature, literally, as a studio. Mm-hmm. We weren't unified. We weren't well structured. We weren't as well structured at that time. It's just absolutely night and day in terms of, our ability to do things. I know it sometimes doesn't look like that from the outside, but it's tough because, these final systems we're doing are big. It's very, I guess the biggest thing is we had a lot of requirements, like we wanted it all to be dynamic. It's not based on, preset heights and things like that in terms of like will lay out the levels so that there's things that you can mantle, things that you can jump over, all that kind of stuff. We didn't want that. We wanted, for modability, we wanted the animation system to just be able to figure that out on its own. And that was a big requirement. So it was complicated. We had to go through iterations. We had to learn a lot of technical things that we didn't know. And we had to basically invent stuff. So, that makes me proud, though, that like I said, that now I know that works. I've played it. I can play it right now. You can't, but I can. I'm just going to tease you guys with that. But I know it works. I've seen it. It works. Awesome. Like we achieved that. The inventory system, still work in progress, but I know what it's going to be. So yeah, some big goals are still there, but like I said, I don't think there's any reason we can't hit them. They're just big goals. They're going to take time, and they are taking time, more than we expected. C'est la vie. That's it.
All right. Well, I know I said that was the last question, but I think the community would rise in an uproar against me if I didn't ask something to the realm of, what might be coming. So before the end of 2017, so in a little less than 6 months, what do you think might be the biggest game changer that we'll see in game as a community?
I guess.
And I know timelines are hard, and I don't really want to put you on the spot like that. But
I'm trying to define game changer elements. I actually think performance is going to be a big game changer. And where I think that's going to be a big game changer is the amount of exposure it's going to bring to the game. We've already had, various very large communities and stuff who are really interested, and these are more like like the Twitch level big communities and things like that, who are just not ready to jump on, really interested, not ready to jump on. They really want it to be 100 players, and they want it to be more performant so that they can film it better and more cinematic. So I think performance is going to be a big game changer in the influx of people that it brings in, the seriousness it brings to the game in terms of like bringing some real tough competition for you veteran guys. Like I think it's going to start drawing in some serious players that you guys are going to have to contend with, which will be great. I'd love to see our veteran community start getting their ass kicked. That would be really pleasurable. You guys are screw you. The new animation system actually has a lot of tweaks to firing. I wouldn't say it's going to. No, I could say it's going to be more difficult in a certain sense. It's going to be different. Like you're not going to have that. There's going to be a little bit more balance, but also a little more skill. So I think, I think that could be a big game changer, especially for the veteran players. It's going to feel different. The weapon's going to feel a little bit different, and all these kind of micro changes are going to result in a different type of gameplay. Hopefully, a little more longevity in firefights is one of the things we want as well. Have a little bit more back and forth, but we don't want to go the Project Reality route, which some people would love, of kind of nerfing the accuracy. That is not something we're interested in either. So it's going to be kind of a hybrid, which I think will be game changing for the community as a whole. It's going to change the feel a little bit.
It's so funny that you bring up the Project Reality like bullet deviation, because that's something that within the ops community everybody knows that I'm actually advocating for.
Oh, good. Well, you're not going to get it.
I
was there. I was there through the whole process. I was, at PR. I was there. I went through that whole thing. I know exactly why it happened. I know that I can make you, or we can make you happy with a compromise that's going to feel a little bit different.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what this compromise is.
Yeah, it's trying to blend all of the different solutions. Yeah.
All right.
There also might be a little bit of something else.
Oh. Doing a little tease there then.
The other things that obviously we're working on, you guys know we're working on helicopters already, so that I don't know if that is in our plan to deliver in 2017. So hopefully that happens. So even with the delay with 2.6 or 4.16 getting added to our schedule, like it's still in the ballpark. Obviously, heavier assets as well, tanks and things like that, are all in the production pipeline, coming down the pipe, and you guys should start seeing that stuff fairly soon. British forces are going to be coming as well, which will have their own complement of new vehicles and all that kind of stuff. So yes, a lot of stuff coming. I honestly, though, personally, I think performance is going to change things. Getting to a 100-player server, I will even go beyond that. Who knows? That would change things.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So all the stuff is changing, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it sounds like a little bit of everything there.
Completely, all the stuff is changing.
All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming out and doing this. It's so great that you guys are so open and able to come out and talk to the community for these types of interviews and just being open with everything on the forums and stuff. We definitely appreciate it.
Sure, I'll get some feedback from my team. So
hopefully you didn't leak anything too big or.
It's always a mixed bag of good and bad feedback. So whatever. Say la vie.
All right, man. Well,
yeah,
again,
it's always good to talk to you guys as well. Obviously, we think Squad Ops is like an extremely unique part of our community that people are very proud of, and like people are interested in, and our team watches Squad Ops, like internally. Like I said, all our social media feed comes up. So yeah, just let you guys know, you guys are definitely, you're one of our partners, and there's a reason for it. We find you guys extremely unique, really interesting. So hopefully you guys just enjoy continued success.
Oh yeah, we've been doing tons of growing, and it's come with its pains, but it's been great to work with and see all these new players.
Cool. Good stuff.
Yeah. All right, well, I think we're going to end things up here. It was great talking to you. Thanks for coming out.
Yep, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So anybody who's interested in Squad Ops, go ahead and visit our website, squadops.gg. Get yourself signed up for events and get on the forums. There's also a link to our Discord on the website. You guys can come out and play with us. We will see you next week. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.